All right, joining us now, the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, Dr. Anthony Fauci. He's chief medical advisor to the president. It's great to have you back on the show. Let's start where we just heard the CDC director end her comments there about how bad this could get. This amid hearing studies about social distancing, maybe going from 6 feet to 3 feet, being okay, and that could be the answer to getting kids back to school. How do you assess the danger that Americans are in right now as we try and get everybody vaccinated, but this pandemic is still out there?
Well, if you look at the numbers, they're still at a level that are really quite risky. We have that major surge over this past winter where the numbers of cases went up extraordinarily high. We were up to 300,000 to 400,000 new cases per day and up to 3,000 to 4,000 deaths per day. Then it started to sharply decline, which is really good news. It went down very sharply, but now it's kind of plateaued, anywhere between 45, 50 and 60,000 per day. That's much better than the few 100,000 per day, but it's still at an unacceptably high level. So as the director of the CDC, Dr. Walensky, was saying just on that clip now, we've really got to be careful that we don't claim victory and pull back on all the public health measures that we know work in keeping a lid on the surging of infection. So although there is good news in the sense of the vaccine continues to get rolled out, we've gone between 2 and 3 million per day. That's very good news. Keeping that up, we're going in the right direction. But if all of a sudden we declare victory, we can risk a surge. They're seeing that in Europe. In fact, Europe is generally a few weeks ahead of us in the dynamics of the outbreak. And they had a plateauing, and then they pulled back a bit on their mitigation methods, and all of a sudden it started to surge again. We want to make sure that that does not happen here in the United States.
Dr. Fauci, it's Willie Geist. Good morning. Good to see you. As we sat here a year ago, you and others told us to look to Europe, obviously, to see what may be coming 2 weeks later. And they're undergoing a third wave now, as you said. I'm curious to ask you about what's happening with the vaccine there. It's a different vaccine, we want to point out to our audience, AstraZeneca, but many of the countries in Europe have paused using it because some people who got the vaccine experienced problems with it. They talk about blood clots. AstraZeneca and the World Health Organization both have said those are unrelated to the vaccine. But what can you say about the safety or any concerns you may have about the vaccines being used here in the United States?
Well, right now, if you look at what's gone on, we've had, about 110 million doses have actually gone into people. About 11 to 12% of the population is fully vaccinated, and a little bit over 20% have received at least one dose. Thus far, and you have to keep following these things very carefully, there are no safety signals that turn out to be red flags. We've had some allergic reactions that we're well aware of, some anaphylactic reactions to the Moderna and the Pfizer product. It ranges somewhere between 2 to 4 per million vaccinations. That's still quite a low level of an adverse event. Other than that, there does not appear to be anything that is what we call a red flag. But this is something that's followed very carefully by the CDC and by the FDA. But so far, so good.
And what does it mean, Dr. Fauci, if you believe the polls that 20% of Americans, or maybe a little more even, say, I'm just not going to get the vaccine, whether it's I don't trust it, I've heard some of these stories online that it's not safe, I don't trust the government, whatever it is. What does it mean to the overall health of our country? Actually, here it says that 30% of all adults in this NPR PBS poll, 30% of all adults say no, they will not choose to receive the COVID vaccine. So the number's even bigger. What does it mean to the overall health of the country if those 30% ultimately don't get the vaccine?
Well, if you talk about a veil of protection or a blanket of protection over the community, namely the country, sometimes referred to as reaching a level of herd immunity, that if you do not get the overwhelming proportion of the population vaccinated, you're still going to have the virus have the capability of circulating in society because there are so many vulnerable people. And we've learned that with other infections. We've learned that with measles, particularly when you get below a certain critical level of people being vaccinated, then you have the risk and the danger of outbreaks. So the approach we would like to take, and we are taking, is to try and reach out and explain to people and ask what are the issues that make them hesitant about getting vaccinated, and try to address them with good, solid scientific facts. Is what the reason why we reach out a lot, to try and explain to people what the process was of the development of the vaccine, all the things that went into it, why it was such a quick, in the sense of rapid time frame from when the virus was first recognized to the time that we had doses into people's arms, was really a big reflection, and a good reflection of the nature and the extraordinary scientific accomplishments that went into our being able to do that. Those are the kind of things that we continue to try to explain to people.
Dr. Fauci, we talked last week about the video that all the presidents put out, the living presidents, imploring people to go get the vaccine. There was one missing. President Trump was not in that video. So just taking politics out of this completely, President Trump had 74 million people vote for him. A lot of people listen to his every word and follow him. Have you been able to reach out to the man you worked for a year and say, Mr. President, boy, it would be sure helpful to our cause and to the cause of the country if you just came out publicly and said, I got the vaccine and you should too?
No, I have not reached out directly to him, but I do it so many ways indirectly, including the conversation that you and I are having right now about what the importance is of getting the overwhelming majority of the population vaccinated. That's very important when you're trying to contain a pandemic.
Hey, thanks so much for watching our YouTube channel. You can follow up on today's top stories and breaking news, or catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.